Now you can't tell the false from the real. Who do you trust? When everything you touch turns to gold. All right. So, I don't know about you guys, but I actually do really love Imagine Dragons, especially their older music. I still remember actually when the song Radioactive came out, as well as the cover by Lindsey Sterling. Oh my goodness. Absolutely. I remember actually, because I'm not too huge into watching music videos. It was one of the first music videos that I actually sat down and watched the full length of. And I remember it being just so weird. Apocalyptic, teddy bears and stuffed animals. But definitely really enjoyed it still. Was very confused. I'm a very literal person here. So definitely confused me there. However, when you look at the meaning of this song and you look up the lyrics in the interview Imagine Dragons did about the meaning behind these lyrics, it's actually accounted for a representation of depression, but specifically picked the lyrics to start with. But now you can't tell the false from the real. I believe personally that this song also kind of puts its foot in the door on the topic of psychosis. And I also want to go ahead and talk about how depression can lead to psychosis. So, this song really does play off that old story that we heard growing up of the man who was able to have his wish granted, where everything he touched turned to gold, including turning his own loved ones into gold, which further isolated him and surrounded him in nothingness but materialized objects, driving him to insanity. Now, depression is definitely a huge factor there, and I feel like depression is almost like a gateway into psychosis. And we see this as well, not even just through this instances, but also in postpartum. So, first and foremost, before I begin this postpartum section, I do want to point out that postpartum is not unique to just birthing mothers. Postpartum can happen to fathers, and of course, when we talk about gender identity can also influence certain terminology when it comes to these postpartum things. But overall, it is not exclusive to just the person who gives birth. Now, we see, and what I've seen personally through my own experience and through my research using mostly NCBI PMC PubWeb MED, a worldwide journal available for free usage. You and I cannot post on there unless we meet the credentials and have the degrees and all the necessary requirements in order to post there. I do consider it a very reliable source. What tends to happen and what I notice, especially in mom groups, is this kind of gradual increase link where in the postpartum period there will be a sense of anxiety, which tumbles into a sense of depression, which then tumbles into psychosis in very rare instances. Now, I actually did have postpartum psychosis, and I would say this definitely built up with me. There's a lot of misconceptions that this is something that automatically starts the second you give birth. That is not true. It is like with everything a build because it's more than just hormones. If it was something like instantly after birth, no biological man that did not give birth because they can't would develop postpartum psychosis, but that's not true. Males can develop postpartum psychosis. Males have been diagnosed since well before I was even born with postpartum psychosis. We know it occurs um, for multiple factors. And hormonal changes, this is another thing that's interesting. Just giving birth isn't the only hormonal changes, and that is also why certain hormones that fluctuate, like we talked in my last video about oxytocin and how doing simple things like breastfeeding can release the oxytocin. Well, just smelling your child can also release oxytocin. And this is true for fathers. When fathers smell their children, they too get the release of oxytocin in their brains. Now, there are hormonal changes that do even happen in fathers. There's hormonal changes that happen even in siblings. So we know that yes, it's a hormonal change, but it isn't because of just birth. There's a lot of things that can influence our hormones from environmental factors as well. And I would argue that smelling your child would be kind of considered an environment. Or is it environmental or is it more chemical because of the scent? I'm not certain on that one actually. But there's multiple different factors, right, that will influence a person's state of mind. It isn't just the act of giving birth here. So we know a lot of times what seems to happen is this progression of things worsening. We know that specifically postpartum depression, when left untreated, can lead to postpartum psychosis, and how postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression are both very similar, often confused with each other. But postpartum anxiety can lead to postpartum depression, as well as vice versa, actually. Postpartum depression can lead to postpartum anxiety. So the order of the events here kind of go either anxiety, depression, psychosis, or depression, anxiety, psychosis. But when we have this combination of factors of the depression and anxiety, well, they don't just disappear. They kind of grab onto each other, right? Because when you think about it, when you have anxiety mixed with depression, what does it look like? It looks like paranoia and dissociation. Well, what is psychosis? A lot of paranoia and dissociation, actually. So it makes sense that once we start combining and these symptoms start getting really severe, it's going to lead into psychosis. A lot of misconceptions that I also see is people thinking that you absolutely 100% have to have postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression in order to have postpartum psychosis, and that is also not true. There are some people where literally whatever happens in their bodies happens and they just get the psychosis. It is more rare, but it does occur. So we definitely can see the correlation of the combination of anxiety and depression and how it can lead to psychosis in the postpartum era. But this is true for in general. In fact, a lot of people with depression will experience paranoia and dissociation, which are symptoms of psychosis. So, when in this song do I think there's the psychosis? Well, right at the beginning, as I just said, we're only 32 seconds into the song when we hear this line of, but now you can't tell the false from the real. This is completely separate, in my opinion, from depression. In depression, you're able to tell the difference between reality and fiction. But once these lines start getting blurred, that's when you get into the more psychosis area. So it's very interesting that Imagine Dragons had talked about this song, saying that this is about depression, but I would argue 32 seconds in, and we're already in psychosis. This is a very interesting and tricky little situation here, but I often do see people confusing depression and psychosis with each other. And I think a lot of it is due to the fact that you can experience a psychosis episode without having psychosis as a disorder. And you can have symptoms of psychosis that co align with depression can lead and trigger to these things. Just because you are experiencing paranoia and are unable to distinguish reality to fiction, especially for a very short amount of time, does not necessarily mean you should be diagnosed with psychosis. But if you are experiencing these symptoms over the course of, I'd say, 6 months or more, then this is evidence that it is, in fact, more than depression. So, where else in the song can we see a little bit of this? Now, I'm going to turn the volume down. By the way, I noticed there's certain people who can't hear me very well. And by certain people, I think it's actually technically everyone. I do know this isn't just YouTube. This is also with Snapchat, with any social media I post a video on, a clip on. I do get people saying they can't hear me very well. So I'm assuming it is just my phone. Now, this is the only device I have, so until I can get a mic, I can't really fix that. But as you can see, I am living in a hotel right now, so my priorities is not a mic. I am very sorry about that. But this fascination as well, can we talk about that for a second? Hold on. The gold aspect, the original story where gold is such a valuable thing. This is back in the olden days where gold was so highly sought for. In fact, that's one of the reasons, one of the many reasons, right? That we had the Americas rediscovered, I will say, by Christopher Columbus in the search of riches, gold. But they found no gold, right? That's kind of the thing. But this was a very sought after mineral, and it was worth a lot. It really was worth a lot. But it's also, you know what? Just not that. So statues and empires are all at your hands. Water to wine in the finest of sands. That's a funny one. The finest of sands. Did you know they actually, when they say stuff like sands and stuff, um, sand was used and imported? Like sand, like that actually is something. Yeah. Look up the importation of sand into the UK. It's interesting. Interesting. When all you have is turning stale and it's cold, all you no longer feel when your heart's turning gold. Who can you trust? Again, asking, honestly, the line itself, who can you trust? This is paranoia. This is not depression. This is paranoia. Yes, paranoia can exist in depression, but I argue this is more a symptom of psychosis than it is of depression. It is so interesting to me that they did not, like, I could not find anywhere online Imagine Dragons talking about psychosis with this song, and it just blows my mind because it's so clear as day to me. Maybe actually, and I have thought about this, maybe there possibly is, I keep forgetting the lead singer's name. I'm pretty certain he's the one that wrote this song, the lyrics. And I do question if maybe he has, because he talks about depression. I don't know if he ever claimed to be diagnosed, but if he is diagnosed, I would actually suspect that he had major depressive disorder with psychotic features. Now, this is actually where you can get it kind of in a way from the psychosis and everything else, having psychotic features attached to your diagnosis, which you can also have with bipolar disorder, right? You have bipolar with psychotic features. This is where you do not qualify for a psychosis-based disorder, but you do have those features and it can be attached to it. So it is still a complete separate diagnosis to just major depressive disorder. A feature is just a feature, right? It's these added symptoms that you are displaying that is not strong enough on its own for its own disorder, but it does correlate with what other symptoms you are going after, and it kind of feeds on it. Think of it kind of like, is it called? The parasocial relationships between animals, right? So you wouldn't call what is it? Those on the elephants, there's birds that will eat off of their backs, I think, and even sometimes their ears and stuff. That's a parasocial relationship, right? It's not harming the elephant. The elephant doesn't care about the bird. But you wouldn't sit there and call the elephant and the bird one entity. They are a separate entity, but they are together in a sense and they live with each other. It's the same thing with these diagnoses when it comes to the main diagnosis and the features. These are still very separate things, but they are feeding off of each other. They're benefiting from each other. So that's kind of a way that I like to think about it. But it is very interesting to me. Oh, it just skipped to the other song. That's okay. But I think this song actually is a better representation of specifically either depression with psychotic features or how depression can lead to psychosis rather than just depression in itself. Um, this idea of seeking something, getting what you want, and being unhappy with it, I think is actually a genuine fear for a lot of people. I know I struggle with this myself. Sometimes I wonder, once life is no longer chaotic and I have this sense of happiness, am I actually going to truly be happy? Or am I going to still be dissatisfied? Or is it going to be, you know, not everything I thought happiness would be? Throughout my life, I definitely have a much bigger different, perspective of happiness. I definitely recognize now that happiness is something that comes and goes in waves. And for me, since I have very extreme experiences and extreme also personality perspectives, for me, my highest highs matches my lowest lows. So therefore, when happiness comes, it comes in a tsunami, just like when sadness comes. So what I have learned, and the best way to cope with this is learning to adapt to those things, not necessarily try and look for a middle ground, because that's something I sought after for years. Is I need to find the middle ground. I need to make this happen. But the thing is that's never going to happen. It's not me. I am extreme. I've always been extreme. My emotions have always been heightened, and there's nothing I'm going to take and nothing I'm going to do that's going to lower these things and actually be beneficial for me. I don't feel like myself when anything does mute me down. I don't feel good. I don't feel okay. And it doesn't scratch the itch that I still have. Instead, what I need is to be able to find peace and acceptance when it comes to the extremities. I need to learn to live and to cope and to understand that as I'm experiencing these wonderful great highs, that the lows will come, and to learn how to take in the moment and enjoy the moment, but also brace myself a little bit for when that happiness goes away and that sadness tsunamis in, right? Because it's not um, a slow progression for me. So, what has helped with me is the constant reminder, as well as when things are really low, that it's temporary. Just like happiness is temporary, so is my sadness. Just as bad as I feel, just think about how wonderful I'm going to feel, you know? And then to not get this surprise sensation reminding myself during those highs again that the low is going to come. But when it does, I can stand strong and I've got it. This has helped me more than anything else I've done, including medications, which is extremely troubling. I know that misdiagnoses occur quite often, and honestly, at this point, there's a lot of speculations that I may not even be diagnosed. Originally, I was diagnosed with MDD as a child, and then it transformed into bipolar, and now we're questioning if it's either of those at all, and if I am just autistic and ADHD, which is very common in women apparently with these types of diagnoses. But one thing that seems to be true no matter what is my borderline personality. Now, this perspective as well can have psychotic features and can be more coexist. can coexist with plentiful of other. Um, it is a personality disorder, not a mental disorder, right? But it is something that can get better over time with age, and I'm definitely reaching that age requirement, right? Where things are supposed to start to kind of clearing away, but about 30% of people with borderline personality disorder will not see much of a change once their brain fully develops. So for me, what I do as well is I add this kind of to my high, high, low, low. No matter what, I've always had this perception of my emotional state even before the BPD developed, because that's something that develops in life. It's something that you learn and adapt into. But I've always had this trait of this highest high and the lowest low no matter what. But one thing that I can keep in mind is yes, BPD does kind of, I would say, make it worse, but also make it better for when it's good. It definitely adds on to it. But one thing I keep in mind and brace myself for is there's a chance it may never clear up. And if it never clears up, then I continue doing what I'm doing. And there's a chance where it will clear up a bit. And I will live the rest of my life with maybe only a couple of episodes. And that would be awesome. But it also is not a cure, and it's not going to cure my other issues that I have my entire life, which is this emotional state that I have, which again we are starting to question on, is it actually bipolar or am I autistic, especially when it comes to sensory issues that I have, processing issues that I have. I looked at as well as the defiant personality that I have, that has always existed in me as a child, and kind of the person where you tell me I can't do something, I'm like, yeah, I can. And you tell me to do something, I'm like, no, I'm not. So that kind of sums up what I mean there. But also just this stimming as well. Oh my goodness. I didn't realize exactly how much I do stim. And what stimming was, a very helpful video that I watched was 1,000 ways of stimming. And I was like, oh, I am guilty of a lot of these things. And then also really discovering what people mean on why they stim. And the best analogies, like what I actually used earlier in this video, is an itch I can't scratch. I've noticed with certain things about myself, if I don't do certain things, I get more stressed out, more overwhelmed. And I notice that I am getting overstimulated a lot more versus when I am able to do certain things. It's like I'm scratching that itch and I just feel so much better, and emotionally I am so much better. So it is very interesting to kind of look at my own mental health throughout all of this. And just to add to it, both of my parents are actually diagnosed with autism. My dad got diagnosed when he was 6 years old, and my mom was diagnosed actually just this past year, which is crazy to me. My own son is actually going through his own evaluation with a what is it called? It's not a is it psychologist. Um, he is much younger. He is only 2. So it is interesting to kind of look at all these things, but no matter what my diagnoses are, I know what my symptoms are, and to look at how they can be managed, and also using music as a way to influence kind of how I feel and what I listen to certain things, why I think about certain things, and kind of getting my mind to think. And understand things and cope and learning new skills, and also diving into other people's experiences and why they write these songs often does lead to me understanding a little bit more about myself, and gives me ideas on how to hold myself in this world and cope with myself in this world. So, if you've been interested as to why my brain works the way that it does when it comes to even questioning certain songs and why I make videos like this in the first place, I am very music orientated in a sense of I like the idea of music basically being a little keyhole into what a person's mind looks like. It is a form of expression, and I definitely feel there are certain communities that come together with certain musicians because of a certain mindset. And that is definitely another topic for a future video I want to do is the type of music that we have and the fan bases that correspond with them and certain musicians and their specific fan bases. Um, but I think it is very interesting to be able to kind of be able to guess what a person is almost like based by their music and have kind of this idea and understand, especially loving when looking up what these lyrics mean to the writers of the lyrics, being able to really get a deeper understanding, especially when there's things that I may not catch on. I really do struggle with a lot of metaphors. And so that's one of the reasons why I look into the meaning of lyrics in the first place, because I do struggle with that. And sometimes it'll take, like, even songs. I think this is that I caught this with the not Rudolph, Grandma Got Ran Over by a Reindeer song. I'm just like, what? I don't remember thinking, what? Like, just the sense taken aback of, oh my god, this has all hit me now. I finally understand. But no matter what your mental status is, I do believe that all of us can agree, especially when it comes to us being children, that there's many songs that we learn as kids, and once we become adults, we find a deeper meaning or a more inappropriate meaning behind certain lyrics, and it takes us aback and make us think. I just love that phenomenon when it does happen. I just love to get a better understanding and a new perspective on things. And that's also why I tend to love to revisit the same music over and over and over again, because no matter how many times I watch something, listen to something, I just, for example, rewatched Has Been Hotel for the 10th time. I'm always noticing something new, or my perspective has changed a little bit from real life events, and I'm able to understand something in a different way. I think the biggest example of this is becoming a parent. When you become a parent and start looking at all of your favorite shows and all of your music, there are some things that mention things with kids or parents or childhood or growing up, and it just hits you completely different. Topics that may not have triggered you before may start becoming triggering. Topics that you didn't really understood before are now your entire world. It's constantly evolving in me. So while, yeah, maybe to some people it's very boring to watch the same thing over and over again, for me, it's never the same experience each and every time. It's almost like it's still new. So I greatly enjoy it. I think as well another aspect of that is just because I do have aphantasia. This is a sense of where you are blind in your mind's eye. I also struggle with the sense of imagination when it comes to the other senses. I'll say my only strong ones is having my own internal monologue, which 30% of the population does not have, as well as the sense of touch I can imagine very alarmingly well. But everything else, hearing other people's voices, knowing what other people's voices sound like, knowing what people look like, and understanding taste and smell, these senses are non existent for me completely within my own imagination. So I also think that plays a part for when it comes to rewatching things as well and trying new things, or not trying new things but trying things over and over, is because a lot of these things really do feel pretty new to me no matter what, because of the aphantasia. um, but the psychotic features aspect is a definitely, well, psychosis is definitely a very interesting topic overall. I definitely would argue, since the Imagine Dragons has said that this is about depression, that I would argue it would be a good representation for depression with psychotic features transforming into psychosis and paranoia. I think the topic overall is a very interesting one, and it's almost a thing of, unless you are familiar with psychosis and what it looks like, you only see it kind of ironic considering psychosis in itself is not recognizing reality, but here you are recognizing representation of psychosis in a song, right? It's kind of funny. I think it's funny. I think it's a weird, funny logic thing. But I always loved this song. This song is pretty old, I want to say. A lot of these lyric videos are 9, 10 years. Oh my god, 10 years? No, no, no. Wait, 10 years? Oh my goodness, I'm starting to feel old. Okay. So here I am talking about a song 10 years old, uh, and I definitely didn't know about Psychosis 10 years ago. If you were to ask me 10 years ago my opinion on the song, I'd probably say I really love it and I think it's really cool that they took a fairy tale and added a new spin on it. And that would probably be where my opinion ended. But now that I understand a lot of mental health due to my struggles and especially psychosis, I definitely have a completely different perspective a whole decade later. And I'm pretty certain that probably in the next 5 years, half a decade, I'm going to have another slightly different perspective on the song yet again. This is definitely a song that I like to listen to, and I do listen to at least once a year, honestly. More than that. But it is still, I also feel like this is a very popular song for AMV edits, anime music videos. I actually used to create anime music videos. A little fun fact there on this channel, actually. I think my highest viewed one was over 15,000 views. But that was much back in the day when I had the ability to edit videos because I had a home computer. But I think maybe one day I'll go back into adding some animated music videos, but definitely not on this channel. I'd probably make a spin-off channel just because I actually, even though I don't edit my videos, I actually really do enjoy them. And I think that you can also see a little bit of my literal sense as well in the music, in the imagery that I choose. Like even my most popular one, I feel like it's such a great representation of how literal I am with so much music, um, and my interpretation. So, if you are interested by this topic and want to learn more about psychosis, I definitely recommend one, the source that I named earlier, the PubWeb MED NCBI. They are wonderful. Just Google PubWeb MED NCBI. I actually do NCBI with a question in Google, and it'll pop up the study for me, and that's my fast way of doing that. But also, I also really recommend looking up people's experiences here on YouTube. That actually helped me understand a lot. Whenever I was trying to get a good understanding of postpartum psychosis specifically. If you are interested in postpartum psychosis and learning about a person's personal experience, I would also say again, YouTube is going to be really good when it comes to story times specifically. Believe it or not, people are still posting story times. And if you have found my video and like my video because it reminds you of the old YouTube style, I definitely recommend searching up story time, blah blah blah, whatever you want, and trying to find those specific type of YouTubers because those are the YouTubers that are going back into that original YouTube style. Um, so if you would like, especially if you would like a little bit more shorter content than what I post, a lot of these other YouTubers post much shorter, but they still have that kind of older YouTube style. So definitely show them some love. And if you have any recommendations of your own of any type of fascinating studies on psychosis or any new medical breakthroughs that I may not be aware of, definitely let me know. I'm very interested in learning even more about psychosis, especially postpartum psychosis. I still feel like I don't 100% understand everything that had happened to me with the postpartum psychosis and why it happened. And it's definitely something that I still want to learn more and more on, especially since just because I've gone through the postpartum psychosis and I'm not diagnosed with anything with psychosis anymore, it is definitely interesting to have the idea lingering in the back of my head that I could go through another extreme event or it could lead to psychosis again, although extremely rare and unlikely. It can, and I want to understand more so specifically how it could trigger in me and again. I definitely understand pregnancy can be one, but it is interesting that I had the postpartum psychosis with my daughter, and then with my son, I'm just looking around like, where is it? And it never happened. It never happened. So it definitely is, and there's the little kicker there. I had it with my first, but not with my second. So very, very interesting stuff. And again, let me know which you guys would like to see in the future for other topics or other songs as well. I do have a list, I've been going down it, but I have been adding certain things to these topics as people suggest them, so long as they tie to the ones I already have. And I have just straight up taken suggestions. I think in my next video, I am going to do a more fun style. I know I have promised the hair tutorials on the buns, and that is something that I might do. That really just depends on when my hair wants to behave. Because don't let this all trick you. This is not my natural hair texture. I braid my hair because I work in food. This Okay, my hair is straighter than me. This is the texture we work with, and it doesn't like to hold the space buns sometimes. But if my hair cannot hold the space buns, then in my next video I will figure something else out for a more fun, relaxing, um, more so vibe than this one. I feel like these type of topics are really, really heavy and not as palatable for the average person. It feels pretty mediocre to me. And honestly, I can talk about much darker topics if I really wanted to, but I understand that I am traumatized, and normal people are not this level of traumatized. So, I think for certain I will be balancing out my next video with a more fun topic. Of course, I always like to add a little layer of creepy within everything because that's just me. That's what I like, no matter what. I still remember when I first found the kawaii and kawaii style, cute, creepy and cute. I love how the names are so similar. Kawaii and kawaii, scary and cute. So funny. But I feel like that it pretty much sums up my entire personality. It's cute but scary. And I feel like it sums up just my style as well. Very cutesy, but also very spooky and creepy. Don't you think? Maybe I'll do a makeup tutorial. I've seen that in the comments. Maybe I'll do another kitten show video. I actually really liked making that one. Um, I'm not certain. Let me know what you guys give me a fun idea. Give me a fun idea. Let me know what you guys would like to see. I would very much so appreciate it. And if you have any hacks I can do in order to capture voice better on my phone, like if you have any ideas on that, definitely let me know. I've been trying to look around to see if there's anything I can do to make it better with absorbing sound, but there's just nothing. And I went through all the settings on my phone, and there's just I can't figure anything out. So let me know what you guys think, okay? And thank you all for watching.